than people who come to fix domestic appliances. And yes, they're technicians. I think that's what we'd say in the academy. They are on their way to being engineers, but they are fixing, they're not inventing, they're not creating, whereas the job of an engineer is actually to create solutions to problems. So we see it as a creative endeavour. And I think the other thing is that, what we notice is that actually once women, having invested all that time, and the path to being a woman in engineering is not an easy one. I'm not an engineer, but I've worked with lots of female engineers, and that they will say, well, you do your GCSEs and there's lots of you. You get to your A-levels and there's 2 or 3 of you in the class with all the boys. You get to your degree course and there's like 100 of you and 2 of you. And then you get into work and it's all men, they're all bolder, braver, louder than you. And sometimes the working hours can be quite long. So they leave, so we're quite focused also on working with employers to create more inclusive cultures that are more attractive to women. So if I just touch on some of the things that we have been doing. One of them is about having a diversity leadership group. So I talked about the work that we're doing with engineering employers. We have about 40 engineering employers like Atkins and Arup and Network Rail, Siemens, IBM, and we work with them. We kind of create a platform for them to work strategically on issues like inspiring the next generation, like building more inclusive cultures, like widening their engagement with higher education. And then there are some action groups that then work to take forward sort of practical action, to make those things a reality. It's work in progress. We've been working with the employers now for 2 years, and we're just starting to see some of the results of the work that we're doing with them. The other thing that we have been doing, because some of the work starts with small steps. However, having said that, I'm trying to think, Baroness, the Green, many years ago, I think it's probably about 30 years ago, Green, that's the one, yes, she was the first one to take a stand around women in engineering. So we're talking 30 years ago, but actually very little has changed. So, we're always trying different ways to engage and different means, different vehicles to try and get the message across. But I think now that we have the skills shortage, there's a lot more impetus from government to do something. One other thing that we're doing, and some of these cards are on the table over there, which is we've identified some sort of 10 steps that employers can take to increase the recruitment and retention of women into STEM, but for us, engineering in particular. And those employers meet regularly to look at what they're doing, to share good practice on what they're doing, and to monitor their progress. So hopefully that will bear fruit over time. With the engineering institutions, there are 36 of them, and as Seye said, there is myself and my job share partner Jenny Young. We head up the programme, so we know that we're not going to make progress by working together on our own. So we build these platforms where we can engage more widely with sections of the community. So with the 36 institutions, we developed something called an Engineering Diversity Concordat, which basically invited them all to sign up to commitment that they would communicate their commitment to equality and diversity, that they would take action, and that they would monitor and measure their progress. Twice a year we convene meetings of all 36 institutions. We bring them together, they share good practice, we look at specific topics. So the topic for the next meeting, which is in May, will be around career breaks. Now, the professional institutions have a role to play in keeping contact with women, with their female members and their registrants as they move from job to job. It's another route in. So we're looking at what happens to women who go on career breaks in terms of their professional registration. Does that registration lapse, or do they come back? And is there anything the institutions can do to keep women engaged in the profession? So that's the work that we're doing there. Seye, how am I doing for time?
Yeah, I'm sure you're...
Couple more minutes, okay. The other thing that I'm quite proud of, you may have seen these booklets here, there are some on the table over there, and it basically says how many engineers does it take to make a can of baked beans, okay? Now, the history of this is that when I joined the academy 3 years ago, I walked in and I saw the place that I'd arrived at, and I looked around the walls, and there were lots of lists of engineers, and lots of actually female engineers in some of our really lovely conference rooms on the first floor. Nice big pictures of female engineers, and there was one picture of a BME female fellow tucked around the corner somewhere. And I thought, well, actually, what we need to do, and I don't think it was intentional, I think it was just, people sometimes just don't think. And I saw that, and I thought, well, actually, if we're talking about diversity in engineering, and if you ever have a conversation about diversity in any organisation, you will often need to say, well, sorry, you're saying diversity, what do you actually mean by that, okay? If you're talking in the BBC, when I worked there, it meant ethnic minority. If you are talking to an engineer, it means gender. It means women, actually, not even gender, it means women. And so that was a conversation people were having about diversity, and when BIS gave us the money for the programme, what they said to us was, we don't want you to only focus on gender, we want you to look at all the other diversity characteristics. So the question is, how do you make that happen? And I thought, well, actually, probably what we first of all need to do is to start to raise the profile of some black and minority ethnic engineers, which is what contributed to this publication. That I actually researched and found loads of really good black and ethnic minority engineers, and we actually built huge materials. I mean, there were 4x6 materials detailing the engineers, and then we built on those later on and added even more engineers and formed it into this handy booklet. So please, take one with you. At the back, so inside there are role models, engineering role models, and you can see how they got into engineering. Some have degrees, some don't, some have got PhDs, others haven't. And at the back, there's a whole load of information, careers information about how you actually get into engineering and how you get to become an engineer. So I will end on that note and not take up